Hello! Big news from our friends over at Distrokid. They now have an app. This app works on iOS and Android, of course, and it's available in the Apple Store and Google Play stores and all the stores where you buy apps. Go check it out. It's got a lot of cool features. You can upload new releases, you can get notified when you've earned royalties. Awesome. You can withdraw from the app via push notifications. A little dangerous for me, but rad. Anyways, go check it out. It's all at distrokid.com/app. And don't forget, you can still get 30% off your Distrokid account by going to distrokid.com/VIP/tour stories. Have a great one. Hello, everyone. Izotope's RX-11 has hit the streets. RX is the industry trailblazer for audio repair and enhancement. Powered by machine learning technology, RX's comprehensive suite of tools tackles everything from common audio problems to the trickiest of sonic rescues for music, audio post-production, podcast production, and content creation. Go to izotope.com and receive your 10% discount on all their software using code FRET10. That's FRET10, all at izotope.com.
Hey, Joe, USA dude, if you're actually a real person, I'm literally begging you. I'm begging you to fuck off, okay? I don't know a John Schmerzel. I don't know any music that you're talking about. I don't have any stories. I don't do stories, man, okay? I don't even, do memory. So please stop calling me. Lose my number, Walmart. Treat me like I don't exist. I'm blocking you now. Fuck off.
Scott McCloud is a singer, songwriter, and guitarist, known for his work with the band Girls Against Boys, amongst many other projects. In this episode, Scott tells us how a simple misunderstanding of gratitude led to a riotous concert in Lisbon. From Ruinous Media, this is Tour Stories.
Let me kind of set the story. I call it the Obrigado story. And this takes place around 2003. And I was, of course, had been in Girls Against Boys for a long time. And we'd toured around and met lots of people. And I had met this guy, Tejo Tiardo, from Italy. I met him in Pordenone. He was playing in a band that was supporting us, but we became friends. And we're kind of just, writing each other and stuff. And he came to New York and we decided to do a project together that was going to be more electronic sounding, because that's what he was into. He was coming out of sort of noise rock stuff, and I was interested in experimental stuff or just trying different things out. So basically we made this record, and the name of the project was called Operator. The record was called Welcome to the Wonderful World. And we recorded it in Italy. I went to Italy and we recorded in this beautiful place called Lucca. But anyway, we made this record and we finally found a small label to put it out, stuff like that. And we were kind of doing some shows around. But as it turned out, when this record came out, somehow got into the hands of this big rock band called Placebo. And the reason why it did is because Girls Against Boys and Placebo had played many shows together in the mid-90s. So this is about 10 years later or something, but they heard this record. It's electronic, but it's like that part of that electronic time. I guess it's around Electroclash, they kind of called it, but it's not exactly, it's pretty minimal electronic. It's not techno or anything. Anyway, Placebo got this record. They were huge, and they were huge Girls Against Boys fans because we played together. And so we always maintain this friendship. And so they get this record, and then we suddenly get invited, Tejo and I, to go on tour with them in Europe and support their entire European tour. And so we're like, that's crazy, because we're like two guys, but we said, okay, definitely we want to do that. Supporting Placebo at this time was kind of a tricky thing for two people, on stage in front of 15, 20,000, 10,000 people every night. So we learned tricks. The tricks you learn when you're doing those big type of tours is basically, at least for us, was get on, go through the set really quickly, hopefully before the audience even realizes It's not part of the placebo set because all these kids, they're jumping around and they're kind of like, they don't really know yet, wait, is this placebo or not? Or is this the beginning of the show? Or is this some other, they don't really quite. And so you want to get on, play a song, clap, get off before anything, before you get booed, basically, or like, who are these guys? They totally suck. It's like, this is not placebo. So this is the mind frame that we're in. And we're doing this tour, and it's actually going quite well, considering we're two guys. Teo would have just a laptop and some like electronic gadgetry and stuff. And I had my guitar, very early form laptop with guitar singer kind of approach. So we're muscling through this tour. It was funny because we rented just a little car, because that's all we needed. And we're following Placebo around, and Placebo's entourage is like 2 trucks, 3 tour buses. So the whole thing is quite funny. And there's a lot of some weird dynamics there just in terms of being in these huge venues. But we kind of learned how, okay, every night you were like a little bit nervous, but you kind of got through it, and we were getting pretty good at not getting booed or anything. And we kind of honed the set and everything. So then we get to Lisbon. And I'd never been to Lisbon before, was so excited to be there because Girls Against Boys never got a chance to play in Lisbon in Portugal. And I was it's such a beautiful place. So I remember arriving, we were on this tour, we had stopped in Spain, Teo and I, to pick up a friend of his who was living in Spain. His name was Steve Nardini, and he was a DJ, electronic DJ guy. And so it was now 3 of us traveling to Lisbon together. So we get there and just enjoying this wonderful day, this beautiful thing. And the place we're playing is this really amazing theater right in the center of town. I think it's 10,000 capacity. And one of those old European wooden, made out of wood kind of theater, just this gorgeous, gorgeous place. So I'm super excited to be in Lisbon. I'm super excited to be there. Tour's going well and everything. And so we sound check and do that whole thing. Then it's time for us to play. So we go out to play. And I guess I can preface it a little bit by saying, because we didn't have that much time between arriving in Lisbon and going on stage. So I had asked Teo's friend Steve, who is now with us, like, oh, how do you think I should say thank you? And he was like, oh, just say gracias. They're going to understand in Portugal. I was like, okay, cool. No problem. So we get on stage and we start playing the first song and things, and everything's going really, really well. Like for us, it's the right kind of theater for us. There's a big floor space, so people are dancing and everything. It's going really, really well through the first song. And I remember this very incrementally because we're really trying to get through things pretty quickly. So it's a quite organized pattern. I'm quite focused on how the audience is vibing. I'm really kind of keyed up a little bit at all these shows to basically avoid, something bad happening. So we're playing the first song, second song. I'm saying thank you. I'm saying gracias. And thank you to the crowd. And things are going really, really well. And then about the third song or so, I start to notice after the third song, like something's weird happening in the audience. And things are kind of, there's something happening. People in between the third song and the fourth song, people are starting to shout out at me certain things. And I don't know what they're saying exactly. It's kind of confusing to me because it's unusual a little bit in the context of this tour. It hadn't happened before. And I'm kind of and the shouting seems kind of like a bit aggressive. And I'm kind of thinking, okay, but in my brain, I'm thinking, well, whatever, just get through the set, keep going. So I'm saying, thank you, gracias, these things. And we continue into the fourth song. As we're playing the fourth song or so, and after my saying thank you and things, I start to recognize there's a real turn in the audience at this point. It's like basically people are starting to get violent, and I don't no idea what's going on. The first thing I'm thinking is, wow, okay, now we're getting it. This is the first time we've had a really negative reaction. People are kind of like dancing still, but there's also this aggression starting to happen. It was, it's this huge 10,000 people. It was just kind of, there was this weird energy suddenly in the room, and I didn't understand what it was coming from. I didn't understand if they were not liking us or what was happening. And so when we stopped the fourth song or so, then people started like really yelling, in this huge room. They were shouting and yelling, and they were saying something. I couldn't quite understand what they were saying, but they even started chanting it a little bit. They started chanting something that I heard. What I heard in my kind of panic mind of being on the stage and trying to get through the set was I heard them saying like, gracias is obligatory or something. I thought they were saying it's obligatory to say thank you. This is what was in my mind. And so I was thinking like, I'm saying thank you. I don't understand how people are. I'm like, thank you. Gracias. It's like, I'm thank you. And so then we start the fifth song. At that point, after several of the graciases, then the crowd's really, really mayhem is beginning to break out in the crowd. It's absolutely a pandemonium is beginning. We're barely struggling through that fifth song. I'm really wondering what the fuck is going on here. I have no idea. Like this music that we're playing had never had this kind of violent reaction. Number one. Number two, it wasn't all violent. There was also lots of dancing. I thought like, I don't know what's going on. And when we finish the fifth song, the whole place is chanting. Gracias is gracias is obligado. Gracias, it's obligatory. They're like waving Portuguese flags and all these things. And I'm in a total panic now at this stage because I'm just like, what the fuck is going on? And even Teo, who's next to me, he comes up to me and he says, Scott, gracias is, I'm still hearing it this way. Gracias is obligatory. And I'm like, Teo, I'm saying, don't you hear me saying gracias? I'm saying it. I didn't understand these things. And so I think to the audience, I looked like I was on purpose being like deviant or something. So it's instead of me trying to take this moment to figure out what's going on, in my panic, I'm starting to get kind of angry myself. I basically grab the microphone and I just really viciously kind of go like, gracias. When I do that, this whole place erupts into absolute mayhem. It's like a total riot. There's people jumping towards the stage, trying to climb the stage. There's security everywhere, pushing people away, pushing people off. I still don't really understand anything that's going on. And so we launch into the sixth or seventh song or something of our set, and we kind of fumble through this song. But at this point, we can't even really get through a song because the entire place is just so deafening with like hissing and this surge of bodies heading to the stage. Security can't handle anything. It's absolute mayhem. So we barely finished that last song of the set, at which point security, they jump on me and they like take me off the stage to the backstage. So I'm led down the pathway to the backstage, and all of a sudden, it's quite silent. I'm alone. And I'm just kind of sitting there and I'm going like, what the fuck just happened? Like I still have no idea what I just experienced. I really had no clue. So I'm sort of sitting there, but I'm kind of glad it's over. I'm kind of like, whew, that was And so I get it. There's a little knock on the door, and in comes Brian Molko, who's the singer of Placebo, and he comes in and he's like, hey man. I'm like, and I say, well, Brian, that was really rough tonight. And he's like looking at me kind of funny. And he's like, yeah, it was pretty weird. And so I say, I don't really know what happened. And he kind of said to me, wait a minute, like you still don't understand what just happened. And I was like, what do you mean? They didn't like us. I don't understand. He's like, Scott, like they weren't saying it's obligatory to say gracias. They were saying gracias is obrigado. That's how you say thank you in Portuguese.
And
so at this moment, backstage with Brian, this hits me like a ton of bricks, okay? Because I'd never heard the word obrigado before, ever in my life. I've never heard this word before. And I'm kind of just like, the amount of emotions that hit me at that thing is just a wide variety of emotions. Shame, humiliation, all these things, absolute embarrassment. I'm just like, oh my God. And so Brian says, Oh, and man, Scott, it was so brilliant, man. It's like I thought you were just like doing it on purpose, and you had them in the palm of your hand. And then I thought you were going to say at the very end, "Obrigado," and then they would have gone crazy. You would have been a legend in Portugal. And then he says, "But you didn't do that."
Oh my God.
And so there I am, totally humiliated. And,
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh, crap, wow, what an idiot. Because there's also all the thing you've toured in Europe and stuff. There's some irony in this because there's the whole stupid American thing and just like, and all those things that are these kind of cliches or stereotypes or whatever. And I realized like, oh my God, I was just the biggest stereotype idiot in front of like 10,000
Sure.
people who I ironically really, really wanted to impress. And I love this city and I was so excited to be here. And now I feel like the biggest idiot on earth. To make things worse, then Teo comes backstage after breaking down the stage. He comes back and I say, "Hey man, is everything all right?" He's like, "No, things are not all right." And I'm like, "What's going on?" It's like, it's crazy out there. You have to leave the venue. The security is going to come and escort you out of the venue because it's really violent and people are like looking for you. It's like really crazy. I'm like, seriously? And sure enough, so then security knocks on the backstage door and they take me out this secret exit down this little stairwell onto the street, and I'm kind of like still in disbelief. I'm like, wow, is this really happening? So they take me, they basically put me outside and they close the door, and then I'm sitting on the street in Lisbon. So I go there's a cafe near there. So I go and sit down at this cafe and I don't know, like order a beer or something. And I'm kind of like trying to process everything that's just happened, process my own humiliation, or just think about what just happened. And I started realizing at that moment, it's like, right, okay, it's very, very offensive to people to say gracias in Portugal instead of obrigado because of also the history and the cultures of these two countries that goes back centuries. Of course, this was coming to my mind. I'm recognizing this now at this moment and feeling terribly humiliated. But what crosses my mind is how different it is to play music in front of 10,000 people as opposed to like 500 people or something. Like if it was 500 people and I was saying gracias or something, they probably would just roll their eyes, and be
Sure.
like, "Oh, stupid American, whatever. This happens all the time." But for 10,000 people, what was kind of hitting me was like that the reaction was so crazy that's also part of the reason why I really couldn't understand what was happening because I didn't know the word. I had no insight into anything. And the reaction was so incredibly violent and so rapid, it happened, that I had no time to really reflect, in the moment, even figure anything out, even though people were literally telling me that it's also about language. People like Teo had told me on the stage. Teo had walked up to me and said, "Scott, gracias is obrigado." But I'd heard it
And
wrong.
you had heard it. Oh my.
I'm like, I know I'm saying it. Don't you hear? And no one could get it. It's like that thing with my psychiatrist to talk about it a lot. It's in human communication everywhere. It's called selectivity. It's like when you see an email or you're talking to someone in a conversation, like our brains are very individually selecting what we hear, actually.
Yeah.
We're selecting what we hear out of what's being said. And out of that, our brains make assumptions. And those assumptions are highly individual. In other words, I don't know if you ever have, but everyone has. You can get in an argument with a friend or something just because you're only hearing selective things from what they're saying and not the context. So after the selection and the assumptions, then you make your analysis or whatever. So in this case, it was like my assumptions were, I didn't have any, I didn't know what was going on. It was just
Right.
absolute chaos. Just to round the story out. So I'm sitting out there at this cafe outside. It's a beautiful evening. I can still hear the kind of crowd like booing and it's like, it sounds pretty crazy inside this venue. I know Placebo's set by now because we've been touring for a long time. So I can hear even from outside the venue, I can hear the intro music, whatever they're going to come on and play. And so then I hear, even from where I'm sitting outside with my beer, whatever, and I hear from inside, I hear Brian Mokel come out on stage. And the first thing he says, very loud, "Obrigado." Okay.
Yeah.
The crowd goes bananas. I can hear them. It's like shaking the streets. Okay. It's like, that's how, and I'm sitting there in my abject just humiliation, and
Yeah.
just thinking, God, this is the stupidest thing by far ever done. And the irony is, I was one of the kind of morals of the story is, don't ask Italians living in Spain how to say thank you in Portugal, because my friends were Italian. I should have asked somebody else, but not to blame them or anything. It was also just my own. It was the other thing that kind of made me think is, okay, whatever was making me feel panicked on stage at that moment and during that thing is a feeling I should try not to have going forward, because this is also what caused the problem. Try to learn to relax a little bit more, try to learn to like just cope a little bit better. So there were some learning things, but anyway, I'm sitting out there, the concert's going on for a while, and to round it out, one of the last things I do, so I'm texting Tiardo, my bandmate. I'm kind of saying, hey, the concert's going on. You think it's all right if I come back in there now or something? And I'm kind of waiting for a while. And I get a text back and it just says, no, definitely not.
Oh my God.
The people were not forgetting. So I couldn't go back in, and that was the end of it. And maybe the last thing to round it out, we had one more show in Porto, Portugal, the next night going north. And by then I knew how to say obrigado. And so I said it all night. And actually that show was like nothing happened. It was not exciting. It was not fun for us. It wasn't anything. And so while I'm doing that show, I was kind of thinking, maybe I should start a riot every night, because like it's a lot more fun in a lot of ways. So there you have it. That's the obrigado story. Yeah,
that's great. It's while you're telling me the story, I'm thinking, how is Gracias so offensive? I mean, their reaction was, you were saying fuck you,
exactly.
Fuck you.
That's how.
And by the way, fuck you, and don't.
And by the way, fuck you even more. Right. And I kept, instead of hearing the message, if I would have just said obrigado, it would have been fine. But I didn't understand that at all. Once, even by accident, if I would have said it would have been fine. But the thing was, and just like you're saying, I had no idea, so I kept doubling down and making it worse and worse and worse, to the point where it really did look like I was saying fuck you. Like it looked like I understood, and I refused to say obrigado. This is the thing that drove the people crazy. But of course I had no idea that's what was actually happening.
Right. Yeah, and it was kind of three-pronged too, because as you mentioned, if it was 500 people, it would have been a different type thing, but somewhere between 500 and 10,000 is, I'm only guessing, is mob mentality.
Yes,
exactly. And so you're telling, over 500 people, fuck you. And also, you are playing a show.
Yes.
A lot of your brain is occupied.
Absolutely. You're very occupied and very panicked about just the songs you're doing. You have a lot going on in your brain, so that's why your brain's not like fully processing. But like you said, the thing was, Joe, that I think the reason why my brain didn't kick in too was just because in all my time of touring before then, I had never seen a reaction based on saying thank you wrong that was like that. Ever. Like, and so that's why it didn't even enter my mind, because the reaction was so not the same size. It wasn't right sized in my mind to what I was doing. So it didn't even cross my mind that could be the cause of it. Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. Because I never would have thought it could make that kind of reaction. But you're right. Later on, I thought, all right, when you're 10,000 people, 20,000 people, it's like a football stadium.
Yeah. There's a tipping point in there.
There's a tipping point in there when basically people start to behave in ways that are very different from the way that normal groups of people behave.
Yeah.
And I wasn't used to that either. Girls Against Boys is not a stadium band or anything. I mean, this is one of the tours where we played to some of the biggest audiences I'd ever played in front of us, and we're only two people, so we're very sensitive. I don't have drums and loud stuff to hide behind. It's just these two guys, these two total idiots.
What are the odds?
What are the odds? It's really something totally quite amazing. And later on, I really love this story though, because for everything we're talking about, it says a lot about human beings, how we behave in large groups versus smaller groups, and just like, and how our brains process information. Like that's the thing that really amazed me the most was like how I didn't get it. That's what, just like how people are chanting this, Scott. I mean, they're chanting it to you. Just say this word, and somehow you're not getting the information. It's just amazing how the brain. I'd already selectively seen. I'd made my assumptions, and my assumptions were the wrong ones. It never even occurred to me that all I had to do was say "obrigado," and I'd be a living legend in Portugal for having like taken them in the palm of my hands and insulted them, and then made them happy and proud.
It's just funny, and then their perspective is there's 10,000 of us shouting the right thing at you, and you are not fucking getting it.
You're not getting it, but that's the thing. They couldn't even believe that I wasn't getting it, Joe, because that's why they thought like he's getting it and he's not saying it on purpose. Yeah. This is where the tipping point was. Yeah. This is where the thing got violent, and this is where it was actually scary because I mean, I was not on stage. I wasn't sure why people were trying to get to me. Maybe they were just trying to get to the microphone to say "Obrigado." I don't know what they were, in retrospect, I don't know, but it felt like it felt like to me that they hated our music so badly that they wanted to attack me. That's yeah, right. Which of course was not the case.
Oh my God. That's great. Thank you so much for that.
You're so welcome. So happy to tell this. It's the first time I ever have, so I'm really happy to tell it. And I think these things are great, and this is something we share. Of that, I like your podcast idea and tour stories and things, because when you're in that bubble of being in the tour, you're kind of like your language and mannerisms, all these things develop over the time of the tour. Yeah. All the jokes and things like that. Oftentimes at the end of tour, it's hard to articulate. You tell your friends, we were on tour and this was so funny. They're like, that's not funny. Because it's a whole language thing you've done. And the same thing, we're all human beings. So I remember being in like Rome or being somewhere in Italy, and the promoters are like, we're going to go get food. What do you guys want? And like someone in my band saying something like, how about sushi? I'm like, what the fuck are you fucking talking about? Sushi? We're in Italy. It's just these kind of bumbling. It's just what we do, and it's just that's why I think that the whole music thing and the cultural exchange of everything is actually so broadening and so funny and interesting, and so many funny stories from so many people, because whenever cultures meet and do that, they rub against each other, just funny stuff happens because we just see things differently, and we all learn from it, which is wonderful. That's the thing. And that's the funny thing, even about the obrigado thing. I kind of got in so much trouble because that's also part of my, and maybe even we probably have this in common with our band histories and the labels we're on and stuff. It's like I'm a very I kind of pride myself on like being interested in everywhere I'm going and stuff. And so I used to always be asking, how do I say thank you, or what should I do?
That's the first step.
Funny that in this case, it totally backfired on me in such a crazy way, Joe, that I have to say, to this day, I don't bother asking how you say thank you anywhere anymore. I just say thank you. I just say thank you in English. I don't want to get...
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get... The best intention was your biggest mistake.
Exactly. The best intention was my biggest mistake, and my panic mind and other things. But that kind of led me down a path, because you're right. As a person,
it's hard for me to even see your panic mind, because it's just like... Anyway, I
think it's quite
singing,
human.
you're playing guitar. It's like you don't.
And all of a sudden, a riot's happening. You have no idea. Right? It's quite kind of human. I think you're right. Thank you for saying that. But it's like we will never even traveling or even living in places. It takes a lot of time to understand, even in Spain or something. The difference. I was just there. The difference between Catalan and all the things happening in the history and the different things, or even in Belgium, the Flemish and the Wallonian. I mean, you're kind of like,
totally.
Okay, it's kind of like I've just learned to avoid it. I know I'm in the French part of Belgium. I'm not saying. I'm just like, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. I'm an American. Bye. I live in Europe. Still.
That's great. Thanks to Scott for that wonderful story, and a special thanks to John Schmerzel for connecting me and Scott. Go to ruinousmedia.com to hear more episodes of Tour Stories, or wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe, tell your friends, support. Thank you. Call me.
decision is, this is real, not fiction. My decision is, detonate your life. Yeah, I made my decision, and my decision is, this is real, not fiction. Hey. Champs-Élysées,